Hi, this is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore. What are you trying to accomplish if you want to join the over 3 million people or so across the United States that are doing low-carb type diets? And that's a good question for you to ask, because that's really going to help you determine what type of low-carb diet you actually want to follow, and give you some ideas of how to track progress. So let's take, for instance, you have very serious autoimmune problems, akin to what Michaela Peterson is going through, where she's got arthritis and skin issues, etc. And when she is inflamed through her diet, she does what's called, she refers to as a lion diet, which is basically ruminant animals, water and salt. That's it. And for her, that is medicine. That is really what helps keep her inflammation in check. And, you know, that is a serious therapeutic type thing. But is it for everybody? Well, frankly, no. I mean, you know, it will keep you alive. It's fine. You know, some people really like it. There are people I know that do a lion diet, not for any therapeutic reasons, just because it's simple and it's tasty enough for them and they're willing to do it. So, you know, that can work if you like it, or if it's necessary to help keep autoimmune diseases within remission. But not everybody has to do it. I mean, frankly, you know, not everybody has to go low carb. Not everybody is insulin resistant. Not everybody has metabolic problems. Frankly, though, about 92% of America has some sort of metabolic problem. There's a thing called metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome is what sets you up for serious heart disease, pre-diabetes. It's basically the fundamental root cause of nearly every chronic disease that's out there. And there are 5 symptoms that can be tracked. One of them is a big waist circumference. If your waist is over 44 inches for a guy, 36 for a woman, you've got one of the signs of metabolic syndrome. If you've got high blood pressure, that's another. A very low HDL, the so-called good cholesterol, another one. High triglycerides and high fasting glucose. So if your blood sugar is high, and if you've got 3 out of the 5, you have metabolic syndrome, which means you are in serious risk of being inflamed. If you follow and do more in-depth blood work, you're going to find out that all your markers of inflammation are going to be pretty darn high. I used to have all 5. The only real cure for metabolic syndrome is lifestyle. There's no pill for it. The only therapeutic is just switching your diet, lifting heavy things, getting rid of the ultra-processed food and the carbs, and probably the vegetable seed oils. If you do that, you can reverse metabolic syndrome. Or at least I did. I mean, I had all 5 parts of metabolic syndrome, and all of them have been reversed since I've gone low carb. Now, when I started this, I had no idea what in the world metabolic syndrome was. I had no idea that it was a problem. This is something that I've just learned as I've gone through this and learned more about health. So I've got videos, and I'll put a link to it below, on metabolic syndrome, it's the deadliest darn disease that you've just never heard of for some dang reason, mainly because there's not a big pill. I mean, if there was a pill that Big Pharma could sell you, you would hear about it. Unfortunately, there isn't. It's just free changes in your lifestyle that reverse the most dangerous thing that's facing America's health. So, you know, it is possible to do, but, you know, you can do it through just eating low carb. And low carb means eating under 30 grams of carbohydrates. Now, how do you do it? I mean, you could do it through a carnivore diet, which is basically beef or meat, eggs, maybe a little bit of dairy if you want it. But frankly, and the reason why I eat that way predominantly, about 90% of my calories is going to come from beef, bacon, eggs, butter. Why? Only because it's simple for me. I mean, I don't have to track any of the macros. I don't have to count how many carbs I'm getting. I don't have to worry about what I'm going to eat. And I like it. It's tasty. I throw in some garlic and onions and stuff like that and spices. I'm not religious about it, but I know that, throwing a little bit of onion in with my steak is not going to throw me out of ketosis. I'm not worried about that. So that's kind of the easy version to me. But, it's basically eating close to no carbs. Up from that is keto. And keto is usually about 30 grams of carbs. Again, no seed oil. You can have dairy with it if you like, if you're not sensitive to it, but not skim milk. I mean, heavy cream, cheese, maybe some cottage cheese and stuff like that. Some really good non-processed yogurt, etc. All these type of things are perfectly fine with keto, but you've got to keep track of your macros. You got to make sure that you are getting less than 30 grams of carbohydrates through non-starchy vegetables. Don't think that keto is going over to Aldi's or your neighborhood grocery store and getting keto bread and stuff like that. I mean, it still means no bread, no potatoes and things like that. But, you're keeping your total carbs down to under 20 to 30 grams per day, and you have to keep track of that. So that is keto. And then there's keto-ish, which is basically getting rid of the junk food, getting rid of the ultra-processed stuff, getting rid of the vegetable oils, getting rid of, the almond milk and all that type of nonsense and all the added sugar. And really just watching what you eat, eating single whole food ingredients, etc. And frankly, for a lot of people, if they just did that, they'd be fine. The problem is there's people like me that have full-blown metabolic syndrome, people that are highly insulin resistant, that they have fried their pancreas, they've been eating carbs so long. There are people that have underlying health problems. And this is how, you can eat to get rid of your metabolic syndrome. And these markers are pretty easy to track. I mean, the blood work to track to see if you've cured your metabolic syndrome. There's 3 easy blood tests. They're fairly inexpensive. Getting your own blood pressure monitor is a kind of a cheap and easy thing to do. And a tape measure is something everybody ought to have anyway. So that's how you track metabolic syndrome. It's something you don't need your doctor's permission to do. Anyone can do it. And the only way to cure it is through diet and lifestyle. So, and frankly, one thing I would really recommend when you're starting off is to seriously consider, you don't have to, but you should seriously consider taking a few months, sometime near the beginning of your low-carb journey, to just do beef, bacon, butter, and eggs for a couple months with just water to drink and maybe some black coffee. And why would I want to do that for a few months? Well, because this is where you're going to find out what you're really sensitive to. There are some people that, they'll do a couple months of extremely low carb, very clean dieting. They're eliminating all the inflammatory stuff in their life. And they have had no idea that every morning they are waking up in pain from inflammation. I know this because this is what happened to me. When I went to and switched to low carb, I remember waking up one morning going, wait a minute, my back doesn't hurt. My knee doesn't hurt. Nothing hurts. And I got great night's sleep. And then I kind of find out later on that because of the cure and I'm no longer inflamed, my joints are no longer swollen, I'm not hurting. So you may not realize just how inflamed you are until after you get rid of that stuff. And then as you finish up that section and you figure out just how good you can feel and what it feels like to be unfoggy and to have clear thoughts, etc. Maybe you might want to say, look, I want more variety. I'm going to start adding things back in. Add them in one at a time. If you really miss heavy cream in your coffee and stuff like that, or cheese, add that in. Add in the dairy at one time. Give it a couple of weeks. See if you're getting dandruff, itchy skin, etc. You'll never know that unless you add it in one at a time. If you tolerate dairy, then maybe start adding in different vegetables. I had no idea that I was really sensitive to spinach until one time, I've been eating, very carnivore-ish, but I had a spinach salad with some friends, and I felt like I got run over by a truck. So a couple of weeks later, I said, was it really the spinach, or was it maybe something else? Maybe I had a flu bug or something. So I had another spinach salad, and sure enough, same effect. Okay, I now know that spinach, there's some oxalate, there's some chemical in spinach that just does not agree with me. And that's kind of a good thing to know. I know to avoid that from now on. I would have never figured it out except I had done elimination and I added things in one at a time. So the only way you're going to know what triggers your sensitivities is for you to eliminate all of them and add them in one at a time. You've got to be kind of scientific about it. There's not a one-size-fits-all for diets. And you're not going to know how good you can feel until you've eliminated everything else and put things in one at a time. We're talking about maybe a few months out of your life to help figure this stuff out. You're going to be around for a while. Why not get it right? Why not figure out what works for you? Invest a couple of months. Frankly, it doesn't take forever. None of us can stick to a diet for more than a few months if it's like a calorie restriction diet or something like that. You can do anything and lose weight. And the cool thing about it is, when you switch over and you go beef, butter, bacon, and eggs, if you're overweight, you're going to lose weight. Now, initially, you're going to lose a lot of fluid if you're going from a standard American diet to beef, butter, bacon, and eggs for a couple of months. And that fluid is inflammation. A couple of cautions. Number one is when you start losing all this fluid, realize that also what goes out with that fluid is sodium. So salt your food liberally to taste, especially during that transition. Number two, realize that when you start losing all that fluid, that's going to mean there's going to be less volume in your arteries, which means your blood pressure is going to go down. And if you're on blood pressure medicine and you have less fluid in your system, there's a real good chance that you're going to get really lightheaded if you're on a strong enough blood pressure medicine. So be sure to monitor your blood pressure medicine. Let your doctor know if it goes down significantly, because if it goes down too far, you're going to faint, fall, hurt yourself. So you don't want that to happen. Number three, if you're on insulin, be sure to really alert your care team that you are switching to a low-carb diet and that you're going to be monitoring your insulin level, your blood glucose, your blood sugars, very carefully. And talk to them about it. They may want to take you off of insulin during this time, during that transition, because too much insulin can become a medical emergency. This is for type 1 or type 2 diabetics. And then the final one is for serious athletes. Okay, if you're in the middle of the sports season, this is not the time to switch diets. Frankly, I know that this may seem contradictory, but there is about a 6-week lag time from when you start a low-carb diet or beef, butter, bacon, and eggs type diet, between when you start and your dependence on glucose. as its primary energy source to when you become a very efficient fat burner. And what that means is your liver converts fats into energy or ketones, but it's not very efficient at it when you first start. It's kind of a new skill. It will become more efficient in a few weeks. I noticed this when I switched over because I was training for a race at that particular time, and I noticed my times were going down pretty dramatically. What was strange was I felt fantastic anytime except when I was exercising. And I started doing a little bit more research, and I realized what was happening was my body did not have a huge store of glucose in the muscles like it used to. I was just pouring carbohydrates in there, and I always had a ready store of it. But when I switched over to low carb, I was burning out my store of glucose in my muscles pretty darn quickly. Your body will make some glucose and it will store it in the muscles. The problem is it doesn't make very much, particularly at first. So you are stuck. You run out of energy, you bonk really darn fast, and your performance starts to lag. But after about 6 weeks, the body takes over, learns how to make ketones very efficiently. You will become a ketone burner. You will be burning through fat, etc., much more efficiently. But as far as athletic performance, you're going to see a decrease at high levels, at least for about 6 weeks after you start. If you're not an athlete, if this is not something that you do, you will probably not even notice it. This is only for people that are engaged in some sort of athletic performance, usually requiring endurance type energy. So runners, people that lift a lot of weights are going to notice a significant drop in performance after a few minutes, but it's only temporary. Just realize that going in. Don't do it at the midpoint of a season or right before a big race. There isn't time to adapt. So this is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore. This is some ways of gauging how effective low-carb diets are, how it can help you get rid of your metabolic syndrome, the markers that you want to check. Take a look at this video down below that are in the show notes that will tell you about metabolic syndrome and how to check for it and why it's so darn important. I try to put out a couple messages each week. If you like this message, please hit the like and subscribe. Join this channel of other like-minded folks. I will talk to you again soon.